So today we're going to be talking about setting your students up for success, specifically QuestBridge and the National College Match. We are going to cover an introduction, the QuestBridge journey. We're going to talk both about the benefits for students in high school and in college. Then we're going to move into an overview of the National College Match, including sharing common characteristics of finalists and details about the deadlines. We're going to follow this with ways that you and your students can begin to prepare for the fall and close out with questions with the question and answer function. As I shared, we have two of my colleagues on ready to answer questions, and we will do that throughout. Please know that we cannot answer questions about specific students or their situations, and also questions that come up that are going to be addressed throughout the presentation are not going to be prioritized. As we get started, I want to launch a quick poll just to get a little bit of an idea about what your experience is with QuestBridge. And there we go. It was taking a minute to load. So we're going to talk a little bit about our programs, and I will be giving an overview, but this is really helpful to know in terms of who's new, who's not new. It's really exciting to see these numbers kind of shooting up, and we have some really good participation thus far. So I'm going to give it one more moment. So it does seem to be pretty evenly spread out about those who are only familiar with the National College Match. I know there are some educators, both teachers and counselors who are here who have written a recommendation or referred a student, and a number of individuals, at least 68, who are completely new to QuestBridge and excited to learn more. So hopefully this will be, an introduction and then overview, and then also some new specifics. And please know that we also have a lot of resources online, which we'll be sharing later. All right. I'm going to share this just so you guys can see what everybody said. And then we're going to move on. So we're going to start by, there we go. We're going to start by talking a little bit about QuestBridge in more detail. So it might be hard to believe, but we are a national nonprofit that has served over 110,000 high achieving students from high school students from low income backgrounds. But QuestBridge actually started as a local summer program for a handful of high school juniors, approximately, actually a little bit more than 30 years ago. While our population of scholars has grown, our purpose remains the same, which is that all students deserve to reach their full potential regardless of their financial background. More specifically, we want to empower talented students from low-income backgrounds to apply to colleges that they are in fact competitive applicants for. As many students do not apply to these colleges because they think they can't afford to attend, or because they don't think that they're a strong enough student, or because they don't know anybody who has attended any of these schools. So our programs really help students become connected to top colleges and these lifelong opportunities. We have 55 college partners. They are all top colleges and universities across the nation. Colleges that partner with us have a commitment to search for high achieving students from low income backgrounds, and they provide generous financial aid to those students. All of our college partners are committed to meeting 100% of demonstrated need. And you will find that there are schools located all across the country. Many of the states that you shared have schools that are college partners. And each of these schools have a community of QuestBridge scholars on their campuses. So students enter QuestBridge either when they're applying to the College Prep Scholars Program for high school juniors, which the application closed in March, and some of you hopefully got some really exciting notifications about students, your high school juniors that were accepted into the program. And then there's also the National College Match in the beginning of their senior year. You may notice, for those of you who have gone through this program before, that there's a lot of similarities in terms of the application process itself, But these are actually two distinct applications. So the College Prep Scholar program helps students to prepare for the college application process, but students are going to be resubmitting an application in the fall. So there is some overlap in terms of the application that students who applied to the College Prep Scholars program, that application is kind of that head start, but they will be resubmitting, re-editing, updating everything that they originally submitted. Similarly, if a student was not aware of the College Prep Scholars program or did not submit an application, or even if they submitted an application and they weren't selected, they are still welcome and encouraged to apply to the National College Match in the fall because we're reading that application separately. Once a student applies to the National College Match, if they are selected as a finalist, they move forward with our process. And ultimately, if they enroll in a QuestBridge College partner, then they become a QuestBridge Scholar and they have access to additional opportunities. This grows and continues with those students as they graduate and become alumni. You'll see my colleague Avery is going to share some links into the chat. We have so much. One thing that I didn't mention is that our entire staff is virtual. We're all over the country. And so all of our information is really set up to be available online and accessible from anywhere. So we're going to be sharing many links throughout this webinar. All of these are links that you can find on your own. I would definitely bookmark some of them as most of them are updated, but anything that is not will be updated in the coming weeks and months. So I wanted to share a quote with you from Ryan. I'm going to use this to take one breather very quickly, but please read through what Ryan has shared. He was a College Prep Scholar recipient and then went on to the National College Match. One of the things that I think is important to know is that there are a lot of students, as I mentioned before, who really are an excellent fit for the program, but they don't realize that, right? And so when they apply and they are selected as a college prep scholar or selected as a finalist, that gives them some hope. But I think it's also important for you as educators to be the ones encouraging these students because you have a broader sense, a broader understanding about what is out there and what is feasible beyond what a high school junior or a high school senior maybe is aware of. So now we're going to talk a little bit more about the QuestBridge journey and the benefits of some of our programs in particular. So applying through QuestBridge opens doors to opportunity. So I want to share that, first of all, we actually already have the deadline for the National College Match application. The application is going to be due on October 1st, 2026. The National College Match is a college and scholarship application, and it requires students to begin preparing materials early in the school year. In addition to having and even before the school year. So our application will open late summer, depending on when your school starts. That might feel like before the summer has ended in the case of New York, or potentially if you're coming from a part of the country where school starts in early August, it's going to be at about the same time. But students really are getting set up earlier. So in addition to having a head start to the college application process, students can apply to any of our 55 college partners using our free QuestBridge application. Those students that are selected as finalists and enroll in a QuestBridge college partner will receive generous financial aid packages. They'll have an opportunity to connect with a supportive on and off campus network of scholars and then ultimately alumni. We have a number of professional and career experiences that are available to those scholars and alumni. And we also have really grown some opportunities for scholarships, including MBA programs and medical school. And that's something in the years that I've been here that has really grown and blossomed as we've had more QuestBridge scholars become alumni. So once students are in college, they really have this opportunity to thrive. And we have programming that is available for all of our QuestBridge scholars. And then those include the QB Hub, different campus chapters, and alumni clubs, and then also versions of mentorship and career opportunities. There are also programs that are available to the students within each of their colleges, and those kind of vary a little bit from one school to another. And then after college, students have additional opportunities for business and medical scholarships through financial support, professional networks, and these top programs. And Avery is actually going to share a little bit, one of my colleagues who's on is going to share a little bit more in the chat about the links for some of these different programs. This is also going to be a plug to follow us on social media, because when we announce new either college or professional or graduate partnerships, we announce all of that on social media. So before I go to the next slide, I think it's important to just kind of reiterate that the big way to kind of connect into the QuestBridge larger network and opportunities is through the National College Match. But for students who are college prep scholars or for students who are applying through the National College Match, we're looking for the same type of student. So for those of you who have gone through this, supported students through this process before, this kind of slide about what QuestBridge is looking for, who QuestBridge is looking for, really hasn't changed very much at all. There are a couple of updates, but you can look through these components. One thing that's important to know is that we are really looking for students who are eligible both academically and financially. So any student who is attending high school within the United States is eligible to apply, as well as students who are US citizens or permanent residents living abroad. They really need to be strong students academically. So ideally, these are students earning primarily A's in the most challenging courses available. And then with that available piece, I'll talk about this a little bit more in the future, but the way we learn about what classes are available comes from both the counselor school report, the students are self-reporting information as well, and then also if a student school has a school profile, we learn about that there. Students are ranking at the top of their class, and they also have strong test scores if they have taken tests. So taking standardized tests are not required to apply to QuestBridge, but we do have a number of QuestBridge college partners that do require tests, either an SAT or an ACT, so it is something that we recommend. But students are not required to submit those scores to QuestBridge. Financially, students are also generally coming from a low income household. They have a low income background. Generally, that's long-term low income. The majority of our students, about 90% of our students, come from households earning $65,000 or less annually for a household of four. And that's regardless of where they're coming from across the country. And they have minimal assets, minimal equity. It doesn't necessarily mean that their family doesn't own a home, but it's something where we're really asking for all of those components and to learn a little bit more about their financial stability, because the students that are successful within our programming do not have any, really don't have any financial strength. And these are students that are going to be looking for full aid from our college partners. Generally, they qualify for free or reduced price lunch, although some schools do not do that, right? And they're facing long-term hardship. And then in terms of their personal qualities, we're looking for students who have demonstrated resilience, integrity, motivation to succeed for themselves, and then also at a competitive four-year college, displaying intellectual curiosity, strong writing ability. They also are making meaningful contributions where they can, whether that's activities at home, at school, or in the community. And then they may be among the first generation in their family to attend a four-year college, which is about 80% of students historically. All of this is coming out in their application. So when you're thinking about things that you can do as an educator, talking to students about the importance of being humble, but also bragging, right? And sharing their full experiences. We only are going to know what a student is sharing in their application. So they really should be talking through these pieces, whether that's their family responsibilities or whether that's that they have a really cool internship, right? Whatever it is that they're doing that's exciting and really allowing them to grow and demonstrate their strength of character, their strength of leadership. They should be sharing that within their application. So I wanted to share, I'm really excited. This past year, our one of our teams really worked to add some additional color and kind of depth to share more about our QuestBridge finalists. So these statistics are specifically from the 2025 National College Match finalists. We look at applications holistically. And so there are a lot of different pieces that we can share. So National College Match finalists are competitive candidates for admission to our college partners. They all demonstrate academic excellence, financial need, and engagement in their home and school and community. But a couple of more facts, right? For one, we have students that are represented from over 3,900 high schools within the United States, DC, and 4 different US territories. So there really is a variety of locations and types of schools that students are coming from. About 90% of our students, or of our finalists, excuse me, are coming from public or charter schools. I like this fact because we get questions about students coming from private schools, from students who are coming from parochial schools, or from even that are homeschooled. So this gives you a little bit more clarity in terms of where students are coming from, really everywhere, right? About 91% of students held a leadership role in an extracurricular activity. And that's something that really is defined by the students. So that could be, they could be really involved in their church, or they could be debate team captain, or, they could be lead for their part-time job, right? Like lead line cook, whatever it is. But again, they really need to be sharing that information with us. And then approximately 100% took advantage of advanced coursework. So students are encouraged to take the most advanced courses available to them. They're also encouraged to find additional opportunities if they can, whether it's self-studying for an AP exam, for example, or taking dual credit courses or online courses. But this is where that school profile is really helpful to understand a little bit more about what's available to the students. Because if something is not available, then they're not going to be penalized for not having that. But it's also really helpful to see kind of that they're really going the extra mile to really prepare themselves to be strong academic students at these competitive colleges. And Avery's going to share that finalist profile so you can look a little bit more. So now that you understand a little bit more about kind of where our students are coming from, what the benefits are when they get to these college partners, and why there's so many kind of short and long-term benefits for QuestBridge, we're going to talk a little bit more about the we're going to talk a little bit more about the specifics of the National College Match. So the National College Match is a program that offers full 4-year scholarships with no loan or parent contribution if matched. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But more importantly, it is consideration for early admission and also multiple opportunities for admission to our college partners. It is a free application. It is free for students to apply to us. And students who move through the program and ultimately are selected as finalists and enroll in a QuestBridge college partner are part of the QuestBridge scholars community and then the alumni community when they graduate. So we're going to talk a little bit more about those multiple pathways because that's something that students sometimes find some confusion in, and educators can really help them support this understanding. So the National College Match application is a college and a scholarship application in one. So there are a couple of things that make us really unique. First of all, when students are submitting their application by October 1st, everything that is in their application is going to be reviewed by QuestBridge and then shared by our college partners. This means that students really want to make sure that everything that they are submitting is to the best of their ability and is as complete as possible. So what they are submitting to QuestBridge is ultimately getting sent to the QuestBridge college partners. It also means that students really want to be working throughout the summer to make sure that they are prepared, that they have all these pieces, all of the, their recommendation requests in their essay, their short answers, their testing, if they're going to do that. All of that really they need to be setting up now and in the summer so that they're ready to submit their application by that October 1st deadline. So the first thing is unique. So we have a number of additional information sections, and this is where students can clarify anything that is unclear. One example would be they have parents, biological parents that are both alive, that they have some contact with, but they don't live with. That's the type of situation where they can explain a little bit more in their additional information section. Maybe they have additional household members that live in their household but are not related to them. They should be including that. Maybe they have a parent or guardian that has a number of medical costs, receiving treatment for something. Maybe a parent can't work because they're taking care of a sibling that has a lot of medical requirements. That information, including even what those financial responsibilities are, really should be included in those additional information sections. In the financial section, because this is also a scholarship application, students are self-reporting their financial information for their family. So that includes income, assets, equity, mortgage, if the family owns a business or owns additional property, all of that really needs to be clarified. And that is all self-reported. On occasion, we will reach out to students to ask for financial verification. But, and this is really important, the most important piece is that ultimately the student will need to submit the FAFSA and or the CSS profile and or any specific school specific documentation to the schools directly by the November 1st supplemental materials requirements deadline. So to summarize, they are self-reporting to QuestBridge. That information should be as accurate as possible, but the actual documentation needs to get to the colleges. And there are students every year who are not matched or maybe are not even receiving financial aid offers because they don't get that material into the colleges. So that is one of those places where whether you are a community-based organization, professional, a counselor, whoever you are that is supporting students, they really need to understand that piece. Educator input is another thing. It's kind of part of that larger application. So teachers will be asked for, there are 2 teacher recommendations from a core subject teacher, ideally 11th grade. There's also a counselor school report and then also that optional school profile. And then under additional materials, there are materials that either a counselor or the student can submit. So for example, the transcript. A student or a counselor needs to be submitting the student's transcript that shares everything from 9th, 10th, and 11th, their classes and their grades. If the counselor submits it, often that's considered an official transcript by the perspective of the colleges, and then the counselor might not need to submit that directly. So that's one of those things where it's some additional work earlier on that's really helpful later on. Students or counselor can submit test scores. They can submit a test score report, right? And then they can also submit that school profile. And then ultimately, if they are selected as a finalist and they are and they are ranking schools, there may be some additional materials that are need to be submitted directly to the colleges. So now we're going to talk a little bit more about matching. So one of the things that's really important, I shared there are multiple pathways. There's the National College Match. That is the application that is submitted by October 1st, where a student is sharing all of their information, the teacher recommendations, the counselor recommendation, the essays, all of that. That is coming to QuestBridge. Then a student can decide if they are going to rank colleges for the match. The match is this early admission to a college partner. It is a full 4-year scholarship. It includes The scholarship is coming directly from the school. It's not coming from QuestBridge, and it covers the cost of attendance, including tuition, books, supplies, housing, travel, food, and it guarantees that there are no loans and no parental contribution. I'm going to later on show you where you can see more exact examples of the match scholarship package, which as of 2025 is estimated to be worth over $325,000. It is this full 4-year scholarship, and the only way to receive this is through ranking colleges, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But students are not required to be part of this part of the process in order to apply to QuestBridge or ultimately to become a QuestBridge scholar. So now we're going to talk a little bit more about this path. And those of you who are familiar with the National College Match have seen a previous version of this slide before, but we'll talk about it a little more now. So our application is going to open late summer. Loosely, that tends to be around the beginning of August, but we're not going to announce a specific date because we want to make sure everything is ready to go. But that application opens. Students who are already receiving emails from QuestBridge will get a notification that it opens and they can start right away. Students have from the time the application opens until October 1st to submit that application. It is not rolling, right? That is the hard deadline. When they are submitting their application, as I shared before, it includes all of the components that we will be reading. It is the full application. Ideally, it also is when teachers, educators are going to be submitting to us via a link their teacher recommendation, their counselor school report, those test scores, whatever it is, all of that is getting sent to us. After QuestBridge receives that application from October 1st to October 15th, that is when students have the opportunity to rank colleges. So you'll notice it is after they submitted their application to us. This is also, as I shared before, students are not required to rank. We highly recommend that students rank schools, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But ranking is if a student is selected to a school, that is a binding acceptance. And so if a student does not feel ready to commit to a college, they don't have to rank schools. But if they are, it's going to be due by October 15th. On October 21st, all students who apply to QuestBridge will be notified of their status, and finalists need to be ready to move on with the process. That's because all match requirements are due directly to the colleges by November 1st. So they really in October need to be thinking about any additional components that are required. They can already look at that information. It will already be on the website, but everything needs to be submitted by November 1st. So colleges have time to read their applications in order to determine who they are going to match by December 1st. So December 1st is match day. Every student who ranked colleges and was a finalist will be notified if they matched or did not match. So if they matched, they are going to move on with QuestBridge. They need to reach out to any other colleges that they had applied and let them know that they have been matched to a QuestBridge college, and that's where they're going to attend. If they are not matched, they can take a day, think, digest the information, but then they should move on because they can still be considered at all the colleges that they ranked as well as colleges that they did not rank. That regular decision form of where they want to continue to apply any additional QuestBridge schools is due on December 10th. We'll talk about that more in a couple of minutes. Any schools for regular decision will hand out notifications, including both admission and financial aid packages in early spring. And then for any student who was a finalist who ultimately enrolls in a QuestBridge College Partner, they enroll and begin in the fall of 2027. So now we're going to talk through the specifics of matching. As I shared, when we talk about match, inevitably the next set of questions is about ranking. So students rank schools after they submit their application before they find out if they are a finalist. They should only rank schools that they are 100% committed to attending because any of those schools are going to be considering offering that full 4-year scholarship. So again, they're not required to rank. We strongly encourage it. In 2025, students who matched ranked an average of 10 schools. So that's something to think about, right? In terms of we get questions about strategy all the time. But for students who rank schools, they need to submit any of the supplemental materials by that November 1st. Colleges are going to review the applications and select who they are able to admit with a match scholarship. College partners only know that a student ranked them and that they are somewhere on their rankings list. The schools do not know where they are ranked within the student's list. So that ranking is actually really important, the order. If a finalist, is matched, they are matched to the highest ranked school that is also able to match with them. They are matched to a maximum of one school, and they are committed to attending the school that they are matched to in the following fall. So again, they should only be ranking schools where they are committed to attending. And Avery is going to share a little bit more about that in the chat. Now, I shared before that students are not required to rank schools. If a student does not rank schools, or if they do not match with a school, they are not rejected from those schools that they ranked. A match scholarship is a huge deal, right? And it requires a really long-term commitment from the colleges. And there are a variety of reasons why a college might not match with a student, even though they still want that student. So a student is not matched. If a student is not matched, they are not rejected. They absolutely can move over their application to the regular decision pool. And in fact, in some cases, they actually can be moved into ED1, ED2, restrictive ED, restrictive early action, So they really want to have a plan in place in November, right? This is not something we need to worry about now. Students are also going to be encouraged to fill out the regular decision form, which will ensure additional college partners review their QuestBridge application. This is free also for finalists, and it represents a huge savings in application costs because it's additional college partners where a student can apply. It will be the same application that they already submitted. So they're filling out a form saying, hey, I want these additional colleges to also view my application. Students who are accepted during regular decision tend to receive excellent aid as well because we reviewed them initially for their academic and financial qualifications. At this time in December, if a student is not matched, they should also apply to a wide variety of schools, not only QuestBridge College Partners, including target and likely institutions. This is because QuestBridge schools are really competitive and there's no guarantee that they are going to be accepted at a QuestBridge College Partner. Regular decision is not binding. So students will have the ability to compare all their acceptances including financial aid in the spring. All of our colleges meet 100% of demonstrated needs. So in many cases, students receive really excellent aid even during regular decision. But in order to be considered, there may be some additional steps that they take. So a student who is filling out that regular decision form will likely need a mid-year report from their counselor. And an updated transcript, because again, they originally applied to QuestBridge in September or early October. And then there might be some school-specific supplemental materials. All of this information you can find online, and there is more information in the link that Avery shared. So moving forward, I wanted to share this quote from Vicky, and I think it's really important. QuestBridge, the application is a lot of work. It's not that much more work than a regular application, and it provides more opportunity for students to share a little bit more about their background and experience, but they really need to get started on it earlier. But then they have this opportunity to apply to up to all of our 55 college partners without paying that application fee. And regardless of whether they are matched or whether they are accepted through another admissions option, if they're a finalist and they enroll in the QuestBridge College Partner, they become part of the QuestBridge community. So it's really an opportunity for them to get a head start on applying to these wonderful schools. So that's a lot of information. We're going to present again in August with more details. You can also find more information online. But in the meantime, let's talk a little bit about preparing yourself and your students. First, refer a student and spread the word. So I spoke quite literally on Monday to a QuestBridge finalist who was not matched, who ended up getting accepted through a later decision process to Colby College and is enrolling there. And he shared that he found out about QuestBridge because he got a letter in the mail and he thought it was a scam. He just shared this with me on Monday. And I used to hear about that a lot, but I was really surprised actually to still hear about that. The reason I'm sharing that with you is because your input and your encouragement matters. So filling out those referral forms, reaching out to students, even to just say, hey, you might be a good fit. I'm not sure about all of your specifics, but I think you should check this out. For the right student, this is an excellent program, really has a strong benefit. And let students know that A, this really is a true program, and B, that they might be a good candidate. So to talk a little bit more about the timeline itself. So I said the application opens in late summer. You will start receiving emails with recommendation requests. So please, if you had difficulty receiving emails from us in the past, make sure that your system, maybe check if your school has an IT person to make sure that you can receive emails from QuestBridge, and then let the students know the best email to reach you. This is both for teachers and then also for counselors. And also, if you are a counselor and your school changes who you are assigned to, let those students know who will be assigned in the fall. That's really helpful. Counselors can start submitting these additional materials as early as the application opens, all the way through the deadline. That deadline is October 1st. All of those recommendations are due by that date. We get so many emails the night of the deadline of educators saying, hey, I never got an email. Can I have an email? Once a student registers you, you'll get an email within a couple of minutes. So if you're not getting those emails, please follow up with the student, follow up with QuestBridge as soon as possible, and from that registered email address. Students, we also have a couple of extra days where we'll accept materials, but obviously the sooner the better, as we have a really quick turnaround. By October 15th, those match forms are due. So if a student is ranking colleges, which again, we recommend students to do, but it's not a requirement, they need to fill out that match agreement form. It needs to be signed by a parent or guardian and then also a counselor. November 1st is when for finalists who ranked colleges, when those supplemental materials are due. Those are due directly to the colleges. At this point, no materials should be sent to QuestBridge. Everything needs to be sent directly to the colleges, which also means that if you didn't get your recommendation or your, materials in on time, instead of sending it to QuestBridge one time, you may have to send it to every single college that a student ranked. So it's really helpful and easier if you send it to us by the deadline. That November 1st deadline, again, is also when all those financial aid forms are due. So if you're supporting students, they really need to be thinking about that in advance because they need those materials in. What can educators do now? First, as I shared, refer students, let them know about the National College Match. If they already get emails from us, you don't need to do that again. But if they don't, encourage them to sign up for the mailing list, follow us on social media. I also encourage you to review our 55 college partners. I grew up in New York City, and I was not really aware of Swarthmore College, which is in Pennsylvania. I actually didn't really learn about Swarthmore until I joined QuestBridge, even though it's within driving distance, right? And it may have been a great opportunity for a college for me to apply to and attend, although I was very happy at my own alma mater. But nobody mentioned it to me, right? So look at these schools. Just because you haven't heard of a college doesn't mean it's not an excellent fit. And sometimes students really focus on the colleges that they've heard of. So learning about some additional schools and sharing that information with the students, especially now, gives them a chance to learn about those schools. Also, please keep an eye on personalized emails from QuestBridge. So if you referred a student or a reference for a student, are listed as a counselor as is for the student, we have been trying to really increase our notifications to you about the student's progress, as long as the student said that it was okay that we could share that information. So keep an eye out on those emails from us, right? Because we will also update you to the best of our ability. And again, if you haven't heard from us, it probably means those emails aren't going through. So always feel free to reach out. Avery, if you can share in the chat that educators@questbridge.org email address is the best way to reach us. Again, ideally from your most professional email address so we can check on your information. But keep an eye on that because we've really been trying to increase letting you know about students' progress. Also, for all school staff, find out if your school has a school profile, because as I shared, we really try to consider students within the context of what is available to them, and we'll only know that based on a school profile. There are some really good resources, such as I think it's called Making Caring Common, that talks about some profile examples that really talk about what's available at your school, what's not available at your school, especially when it comes to extracurriculars and opportunities for advanced level classes. So those can be really helpful, and we often read those when we are reviewing applications. Lastly, a couple of resources and a couple of frequently asked questions. So we have a lot here online, as I shared. Our dates and deadlines webpage is actually already updated, so we're going to share that with you here. That has all of the deadlines and is something that can, I would bookmark that. I don't want students to say, oh, I didn't know the deadline. No, it's on the website already. Our resource library, some of the information isn't updated. So for example, the brochure for National College Match is not there yet, but it will be, right? There are posters for you to print out. There are checklists for students in 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade. There are all sorts of materials that are beneficial for you and your students, even if they are not applying to QuestBridge, right? We recognize that not every student that you work with is going to be the right fit for QuestBridge, but a lot of those resources online are really useful for any student who's considering applying to college, right? So I really do encourage you to look through those resources, pull what you need. We would love for those to be shared as widely as you see fit. We also have Ask QB, which is a very substantial online help portal. There are hundreds of questions, both coming from students, but also coming from educators. We update that every cycle, if not even more regularly. So if you're looking for a frequently asked question for yourself, from a parent, from a student, a lot of that information can be there. So I really encourage you to check that out. And our YouTube channel. I will tell you, I have 2 elementary school age kids, and I spend a lot of time monitoring when my children are on YouTube. But this is one really useful website. We have all of our webinars, including this one will be on there in a couple of days. We have snippets of all of our college partners. We have previous webinars that my colleagues have offered. Everything is there. Everything is updated, more really than you could ever need. But it really is the most accurate information, and we update those, really regularly. So I recommend that you and your students check out our YouTube page as well. So a couple of questions. How can my student determine if QuestBridge is a good fit for them? So if you have a student who was not applying before, they're not sure, they should sign up for our mailing list. They should really review our qualifications. They should be a student who's ready to attend a competitive college. They should look through our college partners. but they don't need to decide if they want to rank colleges yet, right? They should start the application, look through it, and really think, kind of after they submit if they're ready to rank schools or maybe just utilize us for regular decision. But check out that finalist profile, check out our finalist profile. All of that information will really help to get an idea of who the previous students were that were successful with QuestBridge. As I shared before, SAT, ACT scores are not required, but it is something that we recommend. And there are some schools that do require those tests. So they should be, for any student that's looking at those schools, they should be considering signing up for those tests now. And then they can always take the test and not submit their score if they don't feel comfortable with that to QuestBridge, but we recommend it. Next. Is every match scholarship financial aid package the same? It is similar in the fact that all college partners cover full cost of attendance and guarantees no loan or parent contribution, but they are not all exactly the same. And in a moment, I'm going to show you how to find that information. But I want you to know that this particular page is going to be updated later in the summer, maybe even not until September. So this information that I'm about to show you is from 2025, but it gives you a really good gauge. So I'm going to talk through this in the next slide. So you can see, for example, all of our college partners have the same setup. Here at MIT, there's federal work study that's required and a small summer contribution. But as you see scrolling through up and down, right, our webpage, if you look at Stanford and you click on financial aid, there is a small 5% of student savings and then over $92,000 in grants. You'll also see here that further down on the page, it talks a little bit more about the policies. So we get questions about, how long is the match scholarship good for? Is there any way that I could lose the match scholarship? What about outside scholarships? All of that information is here. And like I said, it is not updated for this upcoming cycle yet, but it gives you a really good idea of what those match packages are like, and where you can find them, right? So for Amherst, you'll see overview, application requirements, and then financial aid. And if you look at the overview also, and those application requirements, those talk about the additional pieces that the students will be required to submit. So what can my students do now to prepare for applying to college through QuestBridge? If they haven't already signed up for the QuestBridge mailing list, they should do that. They should absolutely connect with potential recommenders, those core subject 10th and 11th grade teachers, and connect with their counselor. And they should discuss college goals and finances with parents and guardians. And I recognize that that can be really difficult, and you probably already know this, but in order for them to get excellent aid, they need to be submitting appropriate documentation. And we don't want students who in December are sharing with their families that they got matched to a college that the families did not realize. It shouldn't happen because a parent or guardian needs to fill out the match agreement form, but we really want them to have these conversations as soon as possible. And then I think this is our last question. Do you have any materials to support students as they prepare to apply? I shared before, our resource library is like chock full of information. So I really encourage you to check that out either now or in the future. So I just want to end with, we are going to take some questions in a moment. I know that my colleagues have been answering those as well, but your student really can afford a top college. And all of these colleges are committed to meeting 100% of demonstrated need. And there are so many students every year who didn't realize that this was a viable path for them. And so they really should take a look now, right? Read through everything, review the application when it opens, review our website, and determine if this is a good fit for them, because there are QuestBridge scholars, on all of these college campuses. And as I shared in the beginning, there are over 35,000 scholars and alumni across the country, many of whom were in the same boat as your students are right now. So thank you for sharing this time today.